Good morning, His Church London. I'm just sorry I'm a few minutes late. I think we're going to have to change the time because school runs are at the same time. So we're going to, maybe we'll move it to 9:30, I think. Hello, Kerry Ann and Galway, Gecko, and all the people joining us. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is so good to be here with you this morning. I was just saying we might have to just change the time slightly. Just trying to fit in school run and get back it's very close. Hello, Helen. Hello. It's good to have you guys with us. So this morning, I don't have necessarily a brand new word because God's actually been speaking to me about something that I think is important for all of us. And I've been racking my brain. I once read a saying and I can't remember the saying, but I'm going to paraphrase it and put it in my own words. And it's not about the chaos that's happening around you, but it's mostly about the chaos that's happening inside. And so I want to speak into any area this morning where there is stuff going on around in the world, which we have got no control over, but it's the chaos that's going on in our mind and our thoughts and our emotions that sometimes throws us off the rails. And yes, the external has an impact on our internal, but at the same time, it is something that we can actually navigate. And so I want to speak into that today. So if you're here with us this morning, or if you're going to watch later, I'm going to speak to you from a bit of our journey, of my journey. You know, sometimes, hello everybody on Facebook. Sometimes we, it's a very different thing to speak about a concept as opposed to something that has become your reality. And so I want to speak into that. And so I want to just start with you a thought from Deuteronomy, and it's in Deuteronomy 4. And I'm going to start there and then I'm going to go back to give you some context. Okay? It says, "Now Israel, hear the decree and the laws that I'm about to teach you. Follow them so that you may live and go in and take possession of the land the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. Do not add to what I command you, and do not subtract from it, but keep the commands of the Lord your God that I give you. You saw with your own eyes what the Lord did. The Lord your God who destroyed from among you everyone who followed Baal. But all who held fast to the Lord are still alive today. See, I have taught you decrees, laws, as the Lord my God commanded me, so that you may follow them in the land you are entering to take possession of." Now you know this. This is a conversation God's having with the Israelites as they're about to go in and take possession of the land he promised them. So just stick with me. Verse 9, I'm just going to take out some parts where it says, "Only be careful and watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen and let them fade from your heart as long as you live." I'm going to say that again. Do not forget the things your eyes have seen and do not let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. Remember the days you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when he said to me, "Assemble the people before me to hear my words so that they may learn and revere me as long as they live in the land, and may they teach them to their children." And then it says in verse 12, "The Lord spoke to you out of fire. You heard the sound of his words. You saw no form, and there was only a voice. He declared to you his covenant, the 10 commandments, which he commanded you to follow, and then wrote them on 2 stone tablets. And the Lord directed me at the time to teach you the decrees and the laws you are to follow in the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess." Now that's a lot of Old Testament stuff. I'm aware of that. But what I'm picking up on here today is actually that repetition. There's a theme here. There is a constant repetition of what God is saying to his people. And he keeps on saying, "What have I told you? What have I said? Make sure you don't forget about the things I've already taught you, the words that have already come, the commands, the way I've already told you, my ways." And he's basically saying to them, if you do that, if you could hold on to these things that I've given you, you'll be able to go in and take possession of every single thing. There's increase, there's authority, there's ownership when we live from this position, when what God has said becomes something that we live by. And why I'm saying this is because it's not something you don't know. And this is the thing I've been thinking about. So much of this stuff is not necessarily stuff we've never heard before. It's more just maybe we forget. And so if you know, we're in a transition period. The world is in a transition period. Just looks slightly different for everybody. But in a transition period, sometimes the chaos in the reality of all the things we have to sort out becomes so loud that we actually forget what God has already spoken to us. And so I want to remind you today, what has God said to you? Now, I never want that to be a blanket statement that remains like this massive question mark going, I don't know what God is saying to me. Because God has spoken, whether it be something that he said to you in your quiet time, whether it be a devotion you were watching and listening to, and it really struck a chord in you and it really encouraged you, or it really put something in perspective. He is speaking. And sometimes when we're so busy in the rushing of our thought process of the things that we need to do, the things that haven't happened, the things that we don't have answers for, those conversations that God has already spoken and those words that he's already spoken become like a vapor, like they're there somewhere, but they're not substance for you to take hold of. And this morning I want to encourage you to take hold of that. And sometimes it's not just you wake up and it's there. It's sometimes you've got to fight for that place. And I'm just going to speak from a morning school run. You're busy packing lunches. You're sorting out in your mind. You've got your to-do list. You're supposed to send this email, call that person, sort out that financial problem, make sure this is done. And your kids speaking to you, they want to do tie-dye, and you've got 10 minutes to go before the school starts, and there's ink everywhere on their hands, on their clothes and stuff. That's a normal morning for us. And then it's still, you've got to pack lunches, but then you didn't buy bread. So it's like all these things, and God is trying to speak to you in that moment. And then you're making big decisions for your future, but at the same time, what God spoke to you in the beginning of the journey becomes a very far thought that you forget that what he has spoken still stands true today. And so you start grasping at these anxieties of saying, did he really say it? Is it going to be okay? Can I move forward in this? And then you're like, God, you got to speak to me. You got to speak to me. And the reality of it is, he has already spoken to us. And it's not saying that you mustn't search him and you mustn't find him, because that's the word. But when we get frantic in our thoughts, we need to come back to this place where God's saying, I've actually already shown you. I've actually already spoken to you. I've already taught you decrees and laws, and that you may follow them into this next season that I'm taking you into. Because if you jump, it says, watch closely so that you do not forget the things your eye has seen and your heart has understood. And I was just thinking, we go from Sunday to Sunday, and we have got the absolute privilege of sitting under such incredible words of God coming from us, our leaders and our pastors that are speaking to our hearts. And if we were to literally move from, leapfrog, you leap from this situation and circumstances to this situation and circumstances to this one, and every one you want a brand new word. But it's part of a journey. And if we go from, I need encouragement today, I need encouragement tomorrow, I need a new encouragement the next day, what God is trying to establish in you, that you can actually hold fast, that it becomes something that you know, that you carry, that transforms your heart. It's not going from one word to encourage you in this situation to the next one, the next time you need an encouraging word to encourage you for that specific. Because when the encouragement doesn't come, and let's be honest, there are days when encouragement doesn't come, when the people around you do not know what you're battling with, when the thoughts that you've got just bombarding you is so overwhelming that you actually need to take a step back and go, I need a break from my own thoughts. And you've got to actually get to that place where you think, God, I can't go from one word that was only for that moment to the next word. And if Simon doesn't give it to me, then I'm left unencouraged or discouraged. And the reality of it is that there is so much word coming right now that it's not from content to new word to fresh revelation to that, because actually at the same time, if you think about this, we know that the Israelites were in the wilderness for 40 years. They didn't have to be there for 40 years, but they were there for disobedience. But there was 40 years of waiting, and this is the instruction God gave them. And you know what? There was 40 days on the ark. There was 40 days of Jesus in the wilderness. And every one of those 40 days, that means, it's what the number 40 means is that it's a time of transition. And when you're transitioning, you need to actually stop a little bit and take a moment to gather your thoughts and actually remember, God, what have you spoken to me? Do not let them fade from my heart. Because then in those moments when the encouragement doesn't come, there's those words that have not faded from your heart will become your encouragement, will become the word that God has spoken into your tomorrow, into the circumstances. Because the reality of it is our circumstances and our situations and our emotions and our thoughts, they change all the time, but God doesn't. He's not, what does the Bible say? It says he's not like shifting shadows. Like one day he'll say something and the next day he's nowhere to be found. But these things that God has spoken, what are we doing with the words that God has spoken? And like I said, question mark, you're going, what has he spoken? I don't know what he's spoken to you. But I'll say some of the things he's spoken in the season is that there is a season of rest. There's a season of rest and restoration. And you know why it's so important? Is because you actually cannot concentrate when you're distracted in your mind and in your emotions. You cannot grasp something new when you're overwhelmed with what's going on in your inner world. You cannot actually love properly when there's rushing around frantically. What's the next list? What's the next problem? What's the next something I need to sort out? What's this? You cannot love. There's so many podcasts and books. There's actually a book called A Rushing Woman Syndrome, which is basically, it's not just for women, it's for people, where there's you actually don't know how to rest. It's an actual thing, guys. And then we've done these devotions where it's like when you're rushing in your mind, because listen, lockdown has stopped us from doing a lot of things, but it doesn't mean it stopped us from our thoughts. It doesn't mean it stopped us from our own realities. It doesn't mean that everything inside us has also just stopped and caught a breather. If anything, it's exposed what's going on under the surface. And if we don't stop for a moment and actually look at those thoughts and think, God, actually, I can't be frantic and chaotic on the inside all the time, because it doesn't add to patience. It stops us from loving. When you're in a rush and when you're frantically grabbing at what's the next encouragement, what's the word, I just need one for today, it's not going to sustain you for tomorrow. It's actually, what has God been saying? Don't let that fade from your mind or from your heart. And he's speaking into a season of rest, not rest to stop doing what we're doing, but rest to know that when the encouragement doesn't come the way we think it's going to come, he can still sustain us the next day. He can still sustain you in the excitement of the fact that there's more in him. And I just wrote down a few things, this phrase of this constant repetition. God speaks to us, and I want to read just a few just verses, I suppose, to you, where it says in Deuteronomy 1, it says, you've stayed long enough at this mountain. It's time to break camp and advance until the hill country. And some of you who've been following these devotions know I've spoken from that, because it's actually something that I've been meditating on. And meditation has become a brand new way of thinking for me right now, because meditation, not, oh yeah, I thought about it for 2 days, it was a good word and I've moved on, but actually, God, what does it mean? And some of us have been camping long enough around a mountain that we see as a problem, and God's saying it's time to break camp. It's time for you to advance. It's time for you to take all the words that I've already spoken over you, that I've already promised you, that I've already said. There is inheritance in the next step. There is actually something for you to take hold of, because when it speaks about it, it's all talking about possession. It's taking hold of something for your life and for my life. Then it says, see, I have given you this land. What is it that's before you? It's no longer, he's saying, don't get stuck by this mountain. You've set up camp by this mountain, and he says it's time for you to actually move forward. Then it says, may the Lord bless you, the Lord of your ancestors. May he increase you 1,000 times and bless you as he's promised. He has made promises over you and over me. And if you've forgotten what he's spoken to you in any time in your season of transition, go back there. Go back to that place where he's spoken to you a word, and remind yourself. So when the accusations come, when the fear comes, when the anxiety comes, when the frantic comes, you actually need to stop and go, God, what is it that you've said to me? You've said that you're going before me. You got blessings for me, and there's something for me to take hold of. Possession means take hold of something, and it's not necessarily physical, but it could be taking hold of a new way of life, a new decree, a new. What is a decree? What he's spoken, his ways. Take hold of that. He's like, take hold of them, because then you can take possession of other things as well. It says, do not show partiality in judging. I loved it. It's so random in the middle of this thing. Do not show partiality in judging. Hear both small and great alike. Do not be afraid of anyone, for judgment belongs to God. And I don't know who that's for today, but I thought it was it's just a slipping it in between it. But it's like, God, what is he saying? Great and small alike, big and small. What you think is great, what you think is not so great. God's going, don't show partiality. What am I saying to you? Because it's the little things as well as the big things that he wants to speak into our lives. And then it says, the Lord says, I've given you something. Go up and take possession of it. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. And then on the other side, and this is what I'm finishing with this morning, in verse 29, it says, do not be terrified. Do not be afraid of them. And he's basically speaking about the giants you might face as you move out of your transition into what God's got for you. The Lord your God is going before you, and he will fight for you as he did in Egypt. Before your very eyes. What did it say in Deuteronomy 4? Do not let it fade away from your eyes or grow dull in your heart. What has God done for you up to this point? Because listen to this. It says, there you saw how the Lord your God carried you. And if we're rushing from one word of encouragement to the next thing that Simon or Cheslin or our leaders or our location pastors are going to say, or we jump from podcast to podcast to podcast to podcast, waiting for God to speak to us, he's actually speaking to you personally. And let's take time to actually let those words sink in. Because when we don't have time to listen to the next podcast, it's going to add to the anxiety unless we've got something that's sustaining us. As a father carries his son, all the way you went until you've reached this place. Wherever you are today, you are in this place, your place. And God is saying, don't forget, I've carried you all the way to here. You've made it through your worst days. You've made it through your biggest challenges. You've made it through your most overwhelming moments. He says, but you're still here. I've carried you till this place. But the good news is, he actually said, but now it's time to break camp. That mountain that's before you, you got to find stillness. You got to find a moment. You've got to actually get to that place where the word of God, that his decrees and his commandments and the covenant he made with the words he's spoken over your life starts taking root, so that we don't jump from one word to the next word to the next word, but that it builds. It's not a jumping, but it's a building and another building, and it's another step of overcoming, and it's another step of freedom, and it's another step towards peace. It's another step towards kindness. It's another step towards just that cleansing in our own internal worlds. And so, even David, it says, God, I'm going to encourage myself in you. He went through his own battles. The life of King David. He had Saul that's wanting to kill him. He made big mistakes. He had a nation to lead. He was a worshiper. He loved God, but there was just stuff going on around him. And it gets to a point where he said, actually, God, there's so much chaos out there and in there, but I need to get to that point where I'm encouraging myself in the Lord, because your word does not change. Your nature and your characteristics do not change. You've written words on our hearts. You've put eternity in our hearts. And from that position, I can actually move forward into freedom and into wholeness and actually take possession. So I want to say to you, what has God spoken to you? He's still promised that. It's not changed. He's still leading you. Use that as a platform so that he can build and add on to the next thing. And so whatever it is for you this morning, he's not left you. The Lord has carried you as a father carries his son until you've reached this place. But there's more. There's more for you. You don't have to live with these thoughts and anxieties. And I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying it to me, because I am a human being with a family, with a full-time job, with things that are changing. And we've got to fight for these moments in your life and mine. And so I love you. I pray that you would actually stop for a second and say no to hurry, say no to rush, say no to anxious thoughts, and just take a moment today and finish a thought process. Sometimes that's the biggest thing, finishing a thought process and get to the conclusion that God is good. He's not left you. He's not forsaken you. And actually, he's with you, waiting with you for your next move. I love you. Have an amazing week. Be blessed. And we will see you next time. Bye, guys.